Yeah, so if you have anything controversial to say, now is definitely not the time. All right, and we're live. So I'll play us in. Hail, cheaters, and welcome to the Always Cheating Fantasy Premier League podcast. My name is Josh. My name is not Josh. Actually, my name is Brandon. Wow, I've done this podcast for so long that I think I am him.
I wanted to do that. Actually, that was literally my idea, Brandon. I wanted to do that, and people are like, "Wait, what? Am I having a stroke?" So you stole my idea.
Yeah, this is Brandon. I am. Josh is traveling in Italy right now. He'll be back next week. I'm joined by special guest co-host. You know him, you love him, Dave Weigner-Lodahl. Dave, thanks for joining us. How is it going, man?
Hail, cheaters! It's going well. I'll share a little more how my weekend's going as we talk about the story of the season. But I'm doing well. Good to talk to you as always, Brandon.
Right on.
Mi amigo. Hope Josh is enjoying his vacay.
Yeah, the over-under is still on how many pizzas he's eaten, and we'll soon have those answers for you. And Dave, you're hailing from Boston. You are knee-deep in NBA playoffs, the NFL draft, and also this is your time to shine. I always think of you as far as FPL as the late season manager. You and I have been in a little personal cash league for many years, and I always feel like I've got your number. And then come like game week 30, you start to make that charge and you always overtake me. And your FPL record is pretty astonishing. Just looking at the last 3 seasons, your overall rank average is 37,000. So how do you feel about this current season? Because it's been a challenge for a lot of longtime managers. Lots of ups and downs, lots of sort of different players coming into forms at different times. Do you feel like your strategy has changed? Has it been challenged? What's your read? What's the story of the season for you?
Well, first of all, congratulations to everyone listening. We've almost made it. We're almost there. We're almost at the finish line.
Yeah, 3 more game weeks to go. We're still in the midst of game week 35 with one fixture. We got that magic Chelsea v Spurs. You know that Ben Folds 5 song, The Battle of Who Could Care Less?
Oh, yeah.
Look it up if you haven't heard it. I do feel like that's. I mean, certainly Spurs have a lot to play for.
Do they?
I mean, and you are a Spurs fan, Dave.
Well, I mean, I'm assuming top 4 is just
the loss to Arsenal was expected, but pretty damaging as far as your hopes for the top 4, right?
No, yeah, it's basically, and we're basically locked in 5th right now. I mean, you could tell me any scoreline in that game, and I'd be like, yeah, I can see. I mean, so it'll be an interesting one.
The Spurs, to their credit, they pulled a good game out of what was a homicide in the first half. So to have a 3-2 really exciting North London derby when it looked like Arsenal were just going to counterattack Spurs into oblivion was great. So thank you to Arsenal and Spurs for giving us a great game. So anyway, Dave, we're going to do a lot of team talk. We want to talk about game week 36 and how it's kind of a forgotten game week, sandwiched between the double of 35 and the mega double of 37. But let's get back to that initial question of you, masterclass gentleman FPL manager. Where has this season slotted in your memory of FPL seasons?
Pretty mid. I guess I would say, and the longtime listeners will know that my strategy and my gameplay is just all about consistency. I think in FPL, the best thing you can have is luck. And then after that is just consistency. It's setting your team every week. It's doing your transfers, setting your captain every week. You know, half a life is showing up. And that's really FPL, I think, in a nutshell.
Minimum.
Yeah. And then I just try to do the most obvious things. I try to keep it simple. I'll do a little flair things here and there on the margins, but really my strategy is do the obvious thing, and then over time, those decisions will build up, and you'll be okay. So this year I'm 130K right now. I've been hovering around that for about 10 weeks, which is the new 13K, as I said last pod.
Dave, you were surging a couple of game weeks ago, And it's really difficult to, like, when you're surging, particularly when there are so many double game weeks and chips in play, to like hit every beat every game week. So to be at 130K is still a really good position. Like, you're still on the front foot. But do you feel like you've been knocked back substantially here?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, like I was gonna say, like if you said, "Hey, at this game week, you'd have your wild card and be 100K," would you take it? And you say, "Yeah," like pretty much always, you'd be like, "Yeah, I'll take that position." But yeah, I've had actually pretty bad variance, and I'm not trying to like be braggy because I think 130K is excellent, and you've had good luck. But I think I've had some actually bad variance in the past few weeks, which it is, yes, take it on the chin. And like you were saying too, you mentioned sort of NBA playoffs. I'm a Celtics obsessive season ticket holder. It's consumed most of my thoughts for the past
We
month.
had to build today's show around like, what's up with the Celtics?
Around the NBA playoff schedule.
Right,
so thank you for that, Brandon. Yeah. And then you mentioned NFL draft. Patriots had a good draft. You didn't mention Bruins Leafs. We're playing your Leafs. That's going on.
I love my Leafs.
You didn't mention Messi. Messi was in town yesterday. He scored a brace at Foxborough Stadium, so that was exciting.
How are you keeping this all together in Boston? Yeah, Boston is crazy for sure. So yeah, you get knocked back a little bit, but you and I both played our wild card going into game week 35. So it's an interesting point of comparison. I think the real story of game week 35 with that Spurs Chelsea match, or Chelsea Spurs match, I should say, to go is Nicholas Jackson and the camp of managers who just said, you know what, let's see what this party will bring. I'm going Nicholas Jackson. And the prequel to the Nicholas Jackson game week 35 story was the 34 game week long story of Darwin Nunez. Now, I in my wild card, I just decided I'm going to be me. And what does that mean? I feel like I played poker with you for a long time, Dave. And like the way you talked about your strategy is you're always trying to do the little things well. And if I play poker with you for 3 to 4 hours, you're always coming out ahead because you're always focusing on making the smartest betting decisions. You're basically playing by the book. Like if you go
playing the odds,
if you're going into a Vegas casino and you're playing blackjack and you get Delta 16, somebody says to the dealer, "What does the book say?" And I feel like, Dave, you're kind of the book when it comes to FPL. So when you chose to play your wild card, where did you land on Nicholas Jackson?
Well, this was another piece. So actually, I have a quick question, Brandon, too. When do you find it hardest to concentrate on FPL? I know a lot of people like holiday period, with family, lots of fixtures, school vacation week for a lot of parents. For me, it's now because there's too much sports going on for me.
Yeah,
but
right.
Do you feel now it's like a hard time for you or easier time to concentrate?
Well, it's a good question. I think it's the easier time for me to concentrate because the end game is in play. You get the start of the season or the middle of the season, you kind of feel like maybe I can get away with something. And at this point of the FPL season, I feel like I can't get away with anything. So I like my attention is at its peak, and I'm at I suppose, an advantage when it comes to attention bandwidth because I'm not following a lot of other leagues. I'm not an NBA fan, so playoffs or whatever. I'm not a hockey fan. The Premier League is my soap opera. Like, that's what I'm tuning in for. That's what I live for. I was actually talking to my wife this weekend where she was saying she was annoyed at me watching the Premier League this weekend, not because she's generally annoyed by it, but because this is the point in the season where she gets exhausted as a sports widow. She's exhausted at how long it's been going on. And, maybe there's certainly a little bit of fatigue from a fantasy point of view. If you're like kind of like a neutral fan, like this is like the title race is kind of super interesting. But I'm kind of dialed in, and that does play into the story of my wild card a little bit and my game week 35. And I'm gonna throw this up on the screen right now just to see where I'm at. So I made a conscious decision going into this game week. I was around 650K. Nothing was really salvageable for me as far as an overall rank goal was concerned. So there were a few things at play. I had to buck a lot of trends, I felt like, with my wild card. And the reason I feel like my game week rank or my overall rank is where it is I feel like I have been a little bit too by the book, getting hit by variance. I tried to plan too hard for certain double game weeks. And the irony there is, in this wild card, I just said, you know what? I'm all in on the game week 37 double game week and the bench boost. So nobody comes in on my wild card who was not a game week 37 doubler. And the twist in the wild card was Erling Haaland, and I decided to bring in Julian Alvarez as a punt because it was assumed he would start against Nottingham Forest. Erling Haaland, whether he was fit or not, we didn't know what part he was going to play. I thought I was being really smart there, and I captained Son as a differential. Now I'm in a situation where Erling Haaland comes in as a sub, scores the goal. He looked pretty good. I mean, just as much as you could surmise against Forest as a sub appearance, just the fact that he scored a goal and he scored it in a way that was reminiscent of last year, suddenly I'm like, oh, I am very exposed here not having Erling Haaland. So for you, Dave, the Haaland question, should I stick to my guns here and just be like, I need to not have Erling Haaland because that was my whole wild card strategy of bucking the trend? Or am I super exposed not having this guy ahead of the 37 double for City?
You're exposed. I think there was a question in Discord too about how essential like Haaland versus Foden versus Bruno is for the run in. I think the problem, and the Alvarez shot was kind of smart. I kind of like that play, but the problem you run into without Haaland is he's de facto captain in 37-38. So yeah, so you're locked into a double move, which is fine. Because assuming I guess now you have a Schär problem now too.
So
but if you go Vicario to Ortega, no, you can't because you have
the way I fix that, Dave. Though that I feel like the Schär injury for my wild card is actually beneficial for Haaland because they have $5+ million in the bank. Because when you don't have Haaland or Salah, suddenly it becomes impossible to spend all this money.
Okay, that makes a lot more sense then.
Yeah. Schär to Dan Burn, Højlund. Okay, Rasmus Højlund was me getting very cute and clever on my wild card. And it kind of pains me to not get to be cute and clever going into game week 37, even though this week for Manchester United, Højlund continued to be completely invisible. So all logic would say, get rid of this guy. Schär to Burn, Højlund to Pedro for Brighton, who, is always a minute's risk despite the injuries, but does double in 37, does afford me to turn Julian Alvarez into Haaland. So that whole sequence of transfers could be a -8 going into 36, which feels horrible off of a wild card, or it's a -4 going into 37 if I decide to try to risk Alvarez and no Haaland in 35 or in 36. I'm sorry. So, just like that's stuff we can sort of think about as we get into team by team 36 analysis, and we'll talk about your wild card in a second, Dave. But ultimately, I feel like I netted decent enough results with 56, actually 58 when Højlund comes in for a non-playing Foden. It's green arrows across the board. The captain's Son so far is working out. Now, Palmer versus Son. What's your prediction for this Thursday match, Dave? So you're going to be, I think, pretty sort of nihilistic as a Spurs fan.
It could be. Is it away or home?
It's away. They're playing at the Bridge, where Cole Palmer thrives at Stamford Bridge.
He'll start, presumably. 3-1 Chelsea. I don't know. Like, who knows?
I don't. The who knows is the correct prediction right there. You said 3-1 because you're hating your Spurs life right now.
Well, our defense is, suspect.
Yeah, what's the deal there? Because you're really just missing Udogie from your perfect defense, which was okay at the start of the season, and that's really not Postecoglio's game plan to play tight defense. He is just more of a rock and roll sort of a manager, high line, uh, and that sort of a thing. Is it? I feel like it's the midfield. Like
Yeah,
Hoiberg was not great against Arsenal.
it's the spine, and the engine room is just worn out. Not enough depth. I mean, Van de Ven's got to be playing hurt. I mean, he was recovered from a pretty serious injury, played himself back into shape, but I can't imagine he's 100%.
Maybe his sprint to close down Havertz in the second half was pretty amazing. So
yeah, he's
got the speed. Still. I mean, he's incredible. Where the heck was I going with this? Oh yeah, so just in terms of like how healthy is my green arrow going into the last match of this game week? I feel like it's gonna be like a brawl, a barroom brawl, and there will be goals on either side. So I think having the captaincy on Palmer or Son, you've got to be feeling good, because I feel like both of those captains are probably going to get points on Thursday. So I'm going to switch over and share your screen, and I want to hear a little bit more about your logic in playing the wild card and sort of like your game plan going into game week 36, 37 and the home stretch. So when you played the wild card, was Nicholas Jackson like first in, like nailed on? This is going to happen. You've got 47 points.
First name on the team sheet. Yeah. I mean, 3.5 million game week rank, complete, whatever, midweek. But I mean, and on top of all the sports things I got going on, also is a busy work week. So I probably spent
take a vacation.
Well,
you
that's
should
what
go to the Bahamas or something.
I should be eating pizza in Rome. But
there you go.
No, it's fine. I mean, but it also ended up being like I did my wild card in about like 15 minutes, which is not always the worst thing. If you like
don't overthink it, right?
Don't overthink it, right? Like
go
I
with
mentioned,
your instinct.
Keep it simple, stupid is usually my strategy. So that's not the worst thing. But so what's nice about the new era of FPL, obviously it's we have a lot more info, a lot more teams are similar. It's going to be harder to reach top 100K now. There's a lot of things that make a game tougher, more frustrating to some level. But one thing that's nice is you could log on a few different sites, platforms, YouTube, this show, and you can basically just see, 20 different wildcard templates in 5 minutes. So instead of having to dig in every single combination and put it on a spreadsheet, I can just scan and look at 20 wildcard teams and be like, all right, which looks right to me? And, and then you open it up, you're just like, Nicholas Jackson, really? We're all doing this? It's like, okay. Because that was my initial thought too, is like, how can I not have him? Because this is like completely. So
then why? This is really
terrible.
the question I'm most interested in.
Because what else? Because he is, I'm going to bench him this week. He's basically a third forward. Because what other forward are you going to get? You said João Pedro, so that's not great. You'd rather get the 2 appearance points from Jackson, and the shots off target, mega BPS. But then if you go you can't go up to Watkins. Sorry, I'm just ranting, but I don't really know. I guess there were some options, but what are you going to do for your third forward? And then what sacrifices you have to make in midfield?
I'm trying to be sanctimonious because I didn't get Nicholas Jackson, and it could burn me on Thursday. But at the same time, I brought in Rasmus Højlund, which, like, the argument that somebody would make in favor of Højlund over Jackson is, well, Højlund, when he has been on the ball, has been good. He has not been, totally flagrant and missing big chances when they're presented to him the way Nicholas Jackson has. However, but even still, his FPL output, when it comes down to the bottom line, is probably is comparable, if not worse, than Nicholas Jackson's. So I cannot be holier than thou when it comes to that, and I'm kind of coming to terms with that. So I do understand the Nico Jackson thing, but this is kind of starting to be the narrative that I'm creating for myself for this season. Is this a lot of there have just been a lot of really divisive players in the game this season, from Darwin to Jackson, and I'm sure people can shout out on their earbuds many others who've just failed them at the time you needed them most. So I guess I'm like fingers crossed that Jackson comes through for people who put their faith in him on Thursday. I'm kind of like beyond the pale in terms of like any goals I have to hit for the rest of the season.
I mean, Jackson's done better than Hoyland recently.
Yeah, that's
past 10 weeks. I mean,
precisely my point. So I feel like there are not a lot of arguments to say unless you just went like lone Holland up front or something crazy like that. Do you have any leg to stand on in terms of you're playing the right way or something like that? But I also do just want Jackson to blank on Thursday because but that's actually an interesting question we had from our friend Shiv, who says Nicholas Jackson was a couple of inches offside, like a marginal offside, and when he scored that goal the weekend, and a couple of inches off target, moments later in that half, from heading into the goal to have a 2-goal return. With that in mind, is Shiv allowed to take a -8 to get rid of him? and who would you replace him with? So just based on what you know of Jackson, having him right now, not knowing what he does against Spurs, you're thinking of you're going to bench him and then bring him out of bench to do a bench boost in 37?
Yeah, he'll stick on the bench, including the bench boost. So it's easy to say. I mean, Shiv always brings it with the questions, and bravo. This is brilliant question. Thank you, Shiv. I mean, it's the exact right take. It's just like he's a hold. I mean, in reality. So that was your question. It's like, well, he's due, and we need to take a hit to take him out. That means he's a hold. So, but like you said, what's the alternative? João Pedro, Watkins is too expensive. I mean, you could go up to Watkins, maybe if you, like I mentioned, sort of getting like a premier goalkeeper to the city guy now, Ortega. That could bring you up to him, maybe. So, but the forward is a wasteland. Otherwise, it's tough.
Yeah. There's no real report right now on what's going on with Ederson. The reason, like, I didn't even.
Oh, I think he dislocated his shoulder. He was in a sling. I don't.
Oh,
think
really?
He's coming
Okay,
back yet.
good. Yeah, of course, Dave's on the scene. He's a sportsaholic, so he knows what's going on. But there was also this little person on my shoulder saying Ortega is probably going to play regardless, the way he did last season. Like Pep has this weird notion of just moving players on at the end of the season for whatever reason. So I think we still have a lot to digest with Man City, which we can get into in a moment. So I feel like our wild cards the story will not be totally understood with our wild cards, Dave, until game week 37 is done and dusted. Right now, do you feel good about the choices you made by and large? What's like the best decision you made on wild card, and what's your biggest regret right now?
I mean, I think I just got lucky avoiding like that rash of injuries. That there's the whole bunch. I'm not even going to list them off because there's so many, like Shar included. There's a bunch. I was definitely thinking Guardiola was my only like last minute tinkers were just messing around on the fringes of defense, because I'd actually like to hear your opinion on defense strategy, Brandon, because I don't think no teams can keep clean sheets. So we bring in some attackers, and I don't know. It seems like we shouldn't be spending any money there, but it is what it is.
Yeah, so this was my thinking looking at Chelsea and Spurs on wild card. They both have doubles, and this is why I ended up with the Petrovic Vicaria rotation, as well as Porro on my defenses. These are teams that have more fixtures than any other teams, but I don't really know where to go with their attack. Therefore, I'm going to buy defensive assets on Spurs and Chelsea, because as we cycle through the remaining games of the season, I can bench these guys. Because to your point, I don't feel like there's a lot of points to be had in the defense. So why not just bring in X minutes in my defense? So my strategy with defense right now is X minutes. And I feel like I dodged a massive bullet when Chelsea had that, or when Spurs had that resurgence in the North London derby, bringing Gabriel, Saliba, Ben White down to 1 point, because if Arsenal keep that clean sheet, all the wild carders are completely done and dusted. And this just kind of like backs up the strategy of I'm not really interested in bringing in any real strategic players. The problem then is I end up with a lot of expensive guys. So if you say I'm going to bring in Pedro Porro, I'm going to bring in Kyle Walker. There are 4. I'm bringing in Diego Dallo. Every single one of my defenders, Lewis Dunk, is 5 million plus. I have a bad. Maybe by that standard, I have a terrible wild card team. But there is like getting Salah out, and this is. Let's put a pin in the whole Liverpool thing and save that for after we do a break. Not having Salah, etc. The money just afforded a bunch of like a motley crew of defenders.
Well, you know what caused that? Speaking of Chelsea, it's Palmer. Palmer broke the game.
Right. He really
did. That's why we have so much money to splash on defense on all these like flair defense people. And that's why I was thinking of Guardiola, because I wasn't going to get Ederson because I've played FBL before. So that was not going to happen. Yeah. So even though I play by the numbers a lot, like, come on, like, I'm not getting Ederson. That's been there, done that. So that was, so I only have 2 City, which is kind of weird. Not that weird, I guess, but
who are your City guys?
Foden and Holland.
Yeah.
So I don't have any defense. So that was the one consideration.
I think on paper you probably made the right decision, and by rights, Forrest should have scored maybe 2 goals, if not more, against City. Like Chris Wood, you sent me that meme from like the Forrest from the Forrest executive office saying they're exploring their options because they're accusing Chris Wood of match fixing for missing those open goals. Like there is no reason why City should have kept a clean sheet. So Kyle Walker owners, me among them, we definitely dodged a bullet there. But I feel like I was compelled to spend all this money on my defense because of the bench boost. If I didn't still have the bench boost chip, I would have probably brought in a more dead weight. And it's not optimal. So we'll see what happens in game week 37. All right, Dave. So we've got a lot of team talk, I think, to get through as well, because game week 36 feels like it's just like a forgotten game week. Is there any strategy that we need to employ, specifically looking at game week 36? And of course, let's be honest, we're going to talk a lot about the double in game week 37 in the process. Quick shout out for Patreon. If you like what you hear, what Josh and I and Dave, guilty by association, what we've been doing all season, we appreciate your support. The season is almost over, but anything you want to throw in the bucket on Patreon as a thank you is greatly appreciated. Come June and the off season, we turn the Patreon charges off, but we keep all the features alive, so you can hang out in the Discord still. But please go to patreon.com/alwayscheating to see the various levels of support and where you can get the extra ad-free podcast each week. We appreciate the support from you, Dave, and all of our other supporters. Patreon.com/alwayscheating. The Always Cheating Super League. We're almost done with game week 35, so I'll read out the midpoint top 10. It's Marcin Gagala in 10th place, Martin Jansen, Matthew Allen, Rohan Rajwade in 7th, Dan Simpo, Jonathan Okarut, and Chris McKenham in 4th, Laritas Poost in 3rd place, Rashad Khan in 2nd place, and holding it down in 1st is the USS McAllister, Ben Houghton. My favorite team name right now is in 3rd place, Laritz Pust. Team name is 46440-iPhone-12-Pro. Come up with a better team name than that. I dare you, Dave. All right, Dave, let's take a quick break for the podcast. But for the YouTube subscribers, watchers, And we're on youtube.com/@alwayscheating. Let's just keep on rocking and move straight into game week 36. Look at this. We have a Friday fixture. Do you work from home on Fridays, Dave?
I work from home every day.
Every day. You and me both. So, give us a little taste, like the true addicts that we are. Give us a little taste on East Coast Standard Time of 3 p.m. kickoff. Even if it's Luton Everton, I'm here for it. Saturday, a big day for fantasy managers, starting with Arsenal Bournemouth. And for wildcarders, that's a scary fixture because wildcarders got rid of all their Arsenal players, and Bukayo Saka definitely reminded us of the consequences in the North London derby. We've got Newcastle in an interesting away fixture against Burnley. Burnley with so much to play for. Newcastle, generally a different type of side, away from St. James Park. I think we need to talk a little bit about what we can expect from Newcastle assets.
There are going to be goals in that game.
You think so?
Burnley are actually, yeah, they're competent. They're competent. Yeah.
They've got flow. That's how I would describe Burnley. They've got flow. They're kind of like Burnley are the rap artists that will never have their own solo album that anyone will buy, but they will have a great guest verse.
Oh, like Capadonna of the Premier League, or
basically, yeah.
I mean,
the massive league fixture, Sheffield United hosting Nottingham Forest. 0 people will have fantasy assets involved there, and then Man City hosts Wolves to cap off the Saturday, which I think is really the big captaincy discussion. Phil Foden likely will be back. He's got whatever illness. We've lost so many fantasy assets, players, human lives, human time, labor to this illness going around the Premier League. I wish everyone to get well soon, but Man City Wolves is a huge captaincy fixture. Sunday, a little lighter. You've got Liverpool hosting Spurs, a little bit of a nightmare for people who are just going all in on Spurs for the doubles in 35 and 37 because you really don't know what to expect from that fixture. Chelsea looking to keep the points going against West Ham. Villa away at Brighton. You mentioned Ollie Watkins, Dave. So how exposed are we just having cast Ollie Watkins out of the FPL conversation? And then the Monday fixture to round things out. It's Palace hosting Manchester United. We've got so many United assets that we just like dumbly, not dumbly, but you know what I mean? Like what did you think about Manchester United as you were looking at your wild card?
Well, whenever I see him, I'm like, I can't believe Christian Eriksen is still out there just doing stuff. It just blows my mind.
He's like the new Juan Mata. He's a guy balding gracefully in the Premier League.
It's just like retire, bitch. I mean, I love Christian Eriksen. I'm a big Danish fan, and Spurs obviously too. But
Sure.
my main takeaway from the United game is, I guess number one, I think the Onana owners could have gotten an easy double-digit haul if you hadn't punched that dude in the face. And that
as somebody who owned Onana in game week 1, where he did exactly the same thing against Wolves and got away with it, and he got a 9-point haul coming out of it. There was retribution, so unfortunately, that was gonna happen.
On the other hand, they should have let in at least 3 goals. So, like, take it and leave it. So that was my main takeaway. It's just, I guess they were pretty lucky. Score line was certainly deceiving in that sense. So,
what's your vibe on the attack though? And so Bruno, I think, even though he didn't get anything but weirdly 2 bonus points. Attacking returns.
That's the thesis behind the Bruno play, right? You're gonna get a clean like 5-pointer like every week. That's just Bruno. That's why.
I do think he justified the investment in himself. Like he had a shot off the frame. He looked decent going forward. I think he's continuing that form that made managers want to bring him in for game week 35. I feel good still about the Bruno pick.
For sure.
Yeah.
I think the other slots, like you said, like Højlund and all Garnacho, the edges and the tip of the spear guys are like, you never know. It's just too spread out to really bank on one, but
Right.
it'll be a punt.
Do you have any other Man United attackers apart from Bruno or any other defenders?
No. I got Dallo like you. I think we have the same defense apparently. So yeah,
Okay,
not feeling great about that defense.
I
Put
know,
it mildly.
that's why you go for a guy like Dallo who finds himself on the attacking side. By the way, okay, let's use this as to transition to Spurs because I want to get your take on what's going on with Spurs and from a fantasy perspective. But what was going on with Romero in the North London derby? Like he was playing basically the number 10 in the second half. He was so far forward, and I don't really understand why.
I saw the Ange quote, so we were talking about the show. I missed the North London derby because this is my gym Sunday morning, and so it's a time I can't move.
Legendary Spurs fan. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm at the gym. They don't have USA on at the gym.
Yeah. I know you texted me and you're like, send me any meaningful updates from the NLDs.
Yeah. I mean, it's a meaningless game for Spurs. I mean, I joke because it's a huge game,
you're a real one, Dave.
But in essence, I got too much going on in my life. I can't. Sure. Yeah, it is what it is. I saw the Ange quotes afterwards. It's like, we need to build the whole team out of Romero, basically. Like, was the gist of this quote.
Wow.
Like, what happened here? Like, I mean, I like him. I mean, he's a great energy, guy. But
he's a divisive character because he's just really sort of a bit of a banter guy. Can be a dirty player, but at the same time, the dirty player is actually could also be read as the dark arts, and also teams need that energy. Like Mickey Van de Ven is an incredible physical specimen, and he can cover a lot of ground, but he's not a menacing guy the way. Like it's a good cop, bad cop sort of thing.
Yeah, it's a great pairing, and that's what was working earlier in the year too. It's like, oh my God, we have center backs now, and it's like a great pairing. That was like everything was going right at that point. And yeah, totally. He's a guy, you hate playing, but you love him on your team. Right. Yeah.
So like more generally on the team, as far as it functioning or not, it feels like Spurs is kind of like not functioning. They rode their luck into that second half to come back 3-2 and just like sheer will and determination. Something is clearly not working in the goal scoring output the way it was for Spurs earlier in the season. Is there any hope there for managers who invested in Spurs?
I don't really think so. That was my first decision on the wild card was, do I get anyone besides Son on Spurs? So Maddison, he's just off the boil. I love Maddison. I was really considering him a few weeks ago as sort of a differential, but I was like, it's it's like catching a falling knife. It's like he'll turn it around this week. And it's just like it's just not going to happen. So that was a stay away. And then Brennan Johnson was someone I was really thinking and kind of wanting on a wild card just as a sort of like a gut pick kind of thing, and just sort of like he's underappreciated. But that would have meant like cutting either Bruno or Gordon.
You could
probably.
Just buy
so it's like
something. You could buy something for Brennan off of his Amazon wish list. That's another way you could express your gratitude toward him.
Oh, I didn't think of that.
You think Premier League players just have public Amazon wish lists that you can just like buy things for them?
I think that'd be a nice move. I think we should start an app to facilitate that transaction.
Yeah. Okay. So, and then Son, I captained Son coming into this game week, and I'm trying to reckon with how much of me is just so biased and holding on to previous great moments I've had with him versus the Spurs team. Feels like it does feel to me like they're on the right path. They're walking the correct path with Ange, even though the wheels have just truly come off of this season. You will have Europe of some kind next season. You will have a manager that has won the faith and trust of the fans to a degree, as far as what's going on right now in the season. But how much of an overhaul then needs to happen with the rest of the players on the squad? Like, how much more does Son have left to give the club? Is Richarlison ever going to lock in and be like a real Premier League player for a team that's playing in Europe, et cetera, et cetera? You see where I'm going with this? Yeah. Like, how much work does Ange have to do with this side?
I mean, my my feeling, it's a bit like FPL. If we had started the league and we're sort of mid-table, and then just had a final push and was like on, if we basically reversed the season, like and we pushed up into Europa at the end of the year. I mean, it'd be great because this is a rebuild. I mean, we're a year and a half, 2 years ahead of our rebuild at this moment.
Sure.
Like
you
from selling freaking Kane. I mean, hello.
So overstate that.
Yeah. So, I mean, versus when we sold Bale, I think we're doing like pretty darn well where we're at right now. But to your point, I don't know. It's an unknown if we had made Champions League, if we have the infrastructure and knowledge to take those funds and do the right moves. I don't know. That's an unknown, I think, with this new, with Ange and, the football directors currently. So, in some ways, I don't think Europa is like the worst thing in the world because it's we can focus a little bit more on the league and take that rebuild one step at a time. So I mean, I just keep I feel like it's just hey, we're ahead of the game. We're ahead of the game. House money. So that's my feeling on Spurs. But
and Europa League is not a death sentence. The Europa League is a good thing. West Ham is such an interesting example to me. Bringing in players like Paqueta and Kudos, where those are world-class players who could play at a lot of Champions League clubs for sure, and they ended up at West Ham because there was some vintage of European football and also Premier League wages. So Spurs have a lot to offer to new players. I think you guys will make some interesting moves in the summer. The theme is kind of like, I want to talk. We're just kind of like sportsing out here, Dave. I kind of just want to talk about these teams to talk about them, less from a fantasy point of view, because I feel like our hands are tied in FPL in a way because we have these players. I can't see any real reasons to wildly change course on strategy with Spurs or with Chelsea. We talked about Nicholas Jackson, and like these teams just are what they are.
And then you get to Liverpool, though.
Okay, yeah. So
then you get to Narrative FC, and
let's have some fun there. Of course, like everyone would have seen the clip of Salah jawing at Jurgen Klopp, clearly not in a friendly way. If you had to pretend, what was Salah saying in that moment? What do you think he was saying?
Great question. I suppose I should say something funny right now. All I can think of is like actually what he's probably said. I assume like Klopp might have said something like, "Hey, go out there and score," or like, lift us up or something. He's just like, "Yeah, you should freaking brought me in earlier, huh?" Like,
or started me.
Yeah, I should have come in early if you want me to do that, huh?
100%.
So you seemed like kind of sarcastic. So that's where my mind went.
I also saw that interaction as like, Klopp and Salah have been hosting a podcast for nigh on 9 seasons. That would be like me and Josh on the sideline, and like me telling Josh to do something or vice versa. And then for whatever reason, we're just kind of like, yeah, we've been doing this long enough. We know what's going on. I'm sure there's a level of intimacy between Klopp and Salah that can just like manifest itself in some very weird ways. But there's really no other way to read that situation as the bloom is off the rose. There's no trophy in sight for Liverpool and Klopp's farewell tour. Everyone's going to just let their freak flag fly and convince me otherwise, Dave, that Liverpool have now become a toxic zone for fantasy managers.
It's not so much toxic. It almost could be like Galaxy Brain to be like, well, the perception is so bad that no one's going to want him. But in reality, it's like, actually, I mean, still Luis Diaz looks great.
On somebody like Trent is never going to be lower. There's so much.
Well, that's where I was going to go. I mean, Trent is still Trent, and Robbo obviously scored, right? This week. So their defense actually looks more tantalizing. And if you have an injury to Schär, and I keep banging, if you have Ederson and Schär and you go Ortega, Trent, I mean, I don't hate that at all. Like, so that could be a little flare pick of like differential Liverpool defenders. So I don't hate that. I mean, the midfield is fine, except the fixtures just don't stack up with the doubles. So there's really no reason to go for the the Diaz move. So
Yeah,
that's the problem.
Right. Luis Diaz is a great pick, but he's up against other equally great picks. So like great pick. Ceiling is really the word we want to talk about. Looking at 36, 37, and 38, and the ceiling just isn't as high for Diaz. Given the form of the team, given that he has one less fixture than a lot of the options, Phil Foden is really and even Anthony Gordon. Like I couldn't believe when I was initially talking with Josh about his wild card, where he was like, "I don't know about Gordon." Ultimately, he came to his senses and brought Gordon in. But if it wasn't for Cole Palmer, all we would be talking about was the sensational value in Anthony Gordon this season. So Gordon and Palmer are going to get huge price hikes over the summer. Which
I was trying to rationalize. This is when I was thinking about Brennan Johnson or other differentials to be fun. I was just, and actually, in my 15 minutes of doing the wildcard, I did spend 2 minutes on the hub looking at the stats of Gordon, and I was like, oh, these are outrageous. I'm like, forget it. I'm not going without him versus like some of these other picks for sure. And the fixtures are, he's so good.
Totally.
And Isak is on fire. I mean, so that link up is just a really, really nice play.
Yeah.
No brainer.
Isak being on fire marries with this discussion or this worry about Callum Wilson is healthy again. And he's come on as a substitute over the weekend and scored a goal, as Callum Wilson will do. Are you afraid?
Zero. I mean, Isak's in the Golden Boot discussion with Palmer and Holland. He was my dark horse Golden Boot bet before the season. So and he's just on such good form. He can do multiple things. He's not just like a hold up player. He can distribute. He makes all the runs. I think it would be crazy if he didn't play huge minutes in the run out.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I think he starts every match for the rest of the season. The question, of course, is where does he play if Callum Wilson gets a single start? But I think, I don't know if I'm out of my zone here, but if you're Callum Wilson, you're kind of just happy to be there at this point with not a lot at stake for Newcastle at this point in the season. Callum Wilson should feel good to have his fitness back and to get some minutes under his belt. I don't know that he's really vying for making the England squad or anything like that. I think that everything is kind of copacetic with Callum Wilson and Newcastle.
And he did you see he got the record for second all-time goals on Newcastle behind Shearer.
No way.
So I think he doesn't have anything to play for. I think to say besides these like random records. So
he's totally good. All right, let's talk about Arsenal a bit here, Dave, because you and I cast Arsenal aside on Wildcard. You have the double Arsenal defense on Wildcard that you wisely benched this week. Tell me a little bit about your view of Arsenal at this point of the season and how much you'll be playing these guys. Arsenal don't double in game week 37, but you bench boost. So you get to play. Are you going to basically play these guys for the rest of the season?
Yeah, because you got the bench boost, and then, obviously 36 is a good fixture. 38, Everton's a good fixture. The problem with Arsenal is our friend Mike, who's in our ear all the time about, he's got reverse jinxing his team every 2 seconds. Oh, they run out of gas. Season's over. It just wasn't the year. And I take him at face value because, I'm like, okay, that's good analysis. And I didn't realize you're just sandbagging. Like, so now I don't know what to think.
Classic. Yeah. Oh no, my favorite text that I sent this week was to you and Mike. So you being a Spurs supporter and Mike an Arsenal supporter, and Mike hates it because he doesn't play fantasy. When we're like, oh, Arsenal clean sheet wipeout, this is bad for us. He thinks like it's sort of like degrading the love of the game. Yeah. So when you being a Spurs fan, I was like, oh, Dave's losing twice over. He lost the Arsenal clean sheet and Spurs are losing. I just love that so much.
Or when I was trying to rationalize how Gabriel's going to get a golden assist, and Mike's like, how's he going to do that? I'm like, dude, fantasy assist. It'll happen.
Yeah. I just don't see where Arsenal fit in to the midfield, given our plans for game week 37. Even if you weren't bench boosting, and I don't even know how that changes the conversation. But what's the argument for getting Saka in for any other midfielder that we've got sort of set out for the run-in?
I mean, Saka's as good as put that along with like KDB or like even Madison. It's just they're all kind of punty, and it's like if you go with your gut, I think they're all fine. Especially it's a good fixture. They're at home, right? Bournemouth.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a great fixture. I mean, his problem is 37. So if you want to book a transfer or just roll the dice that like Saka might outscore on a single game week, which is more than possible against United, whose defense is freaking horrible. Like, so, I mean, I don't hate that at all. In fact, I'm like almost talking myself into it. If you have an injury and want to make the move, I don't mind the Saka move.
So that's the debate over captaincy in game week 36. If you have somebody like Saka or Havertz or even Odegaard for that matter, can you captain an Arsenal player? Not can you, but would you captain an Arsenal player? I guess honestly over a Man City player. So Arsenal host Bournemouth, as you mentioned, Dave, and City on Saturday host Wolves. Sort of like, which is the worse team? And Bournemouth and Wolves' comparison are kind of interesting. Bournemouth they're in better form. They've been having the slightly better season, and they're playing a little bit more dynamically than Wolves are at the moment. They haven't suffered as many injuries as Wolves had, to be fair.
Well, the Wolves guys have come back, though. They have Cunha back, and
back.
Yeah. So I mean, they're actually now I was just checking the odds too, because I was thinking the City clean sheet odds are like a coin flip. So the Wolves are good chance of scoring this game, and that could actually push City. So that makes me want to captain Haaland more. Palmer's the other tantalizing choice.
I think that's a really interesting way to frame a captaincy discussion, which I don't think I've ever heard articulated before. Not to put you on a pedestal, Dave, as I'm wont to do, but to captain a player on a team that is likely to lose a clean sheet, because then the pressure gets put on them to score more. So namely Haaland there. So Haaland is going to have output to offset the loss of the clean sheet, where Arsenal goes into the Bournemouth match with a healthier expectation of a clean sheet and can maybe play a little
Chelsea
bit more.
As well.
Right. It's more of a controlled fixture. Yeah, and yeah. So I
that's actually that's a strategy from NFL fantasy, because when you think about like who to play, like sit start, like a receiver, running or running backs actually would be helpful. But if you're ahead, if you think it's going to be a game where you're not going to get, because the other team just has a crap offense, they're going to play possession, and you're not going to get a 3 touchdown game from a receiver. You don't have the ceiling typically. Yeah. So, I mean, obviously that's not always true. I mean, you can have like a 7-0 drubbing, but like, I don't know, it just makes me, when you're flipping coins, it's fun to have a narrative at least, I guess.
Totally.
That's my thinking.
So I do think those are the teams to focus on still, Arsenal and City. Could you make a case for any other player, Dave? Because all the other viable options to me are playing away. Newcastle hosts Burnley, and as far as what you've said, Dave, you're like Mr. Burnley. You think Burnley is like which rapper did you liken them to?
Capadonna.
They're they're Burnley, the Capadonna of the Premier League. You've got if you have any faith in Bruno Fernandes at all, they're going to what our friend, and special thanks to Timbo, our listener who helped me on the Patreon pod this week. We dubbed Selhurst Park as Kokomo Arena in honor of the Beach Boys.
Great song.
And listen, the Crystal Palace will be thanking Always Cheating for putting them on the beach team list, but I don't think anyone's going to love that fixture for Bruno Fernandes. Isak and Gordon away from home against Burnley. Ollie Watkins might be the only outside shot outside of Arsenal and City because
Yeah,
Brighton,
I didn't want
are a
to.
disaster.
Yeah, exactly. I was gonna say I don't want to bang the drum too much on Watkins and give people the wrong impression, but I did. I was like, we should break that up. It's like that would be a really fun captain punt if you're just playing for fun at this point. So it is what.
What's going on with Brighton, Dave? Do you think it's just sort of like beachy? There's nothing left for Brighton to do this season. They're kind of riding it out. Is there really a problem there? Is this really a bad team? Do they have more good performances in them?
Yeah, they're probably 1, 2, 3 Cancun at this point, and I think it's just. I mean, with any sports team, I think it's like a cultural locker room thing. It's just sometimes the chemistry just fizzles out or it's just not there, and we all see it. It's on the screen. You can't really hide,
It's can't hide from it.
Yeah.
Shout out to Travis, who's in the chat on the YouTube, who hears us comparing Burnley to Capadonna, and Travis says Burnley has no bars. And I don't know if that's just a shot at the town of Burnley having no good places to go get a beer, or if they have no verses.
Have you seen the videos of people in MF Doom mass reading the Taylor Swift lyrics in the style of MF Doom? That's been a great meme.
I was hoping you were going to say reading Moby Dick, but you disappointed me there. That's fine.
Okay. All right, literary boy, like relax.
Sure.
I'm this pop culture podcast.
I like Taylor. I've got no beef with Taylor Swift. I mean, is it worth seeking out? Should we check it out?
Sure. No, it's just a trend because the new Taylor Swift, she goes a little too hard on the rhymes, a little too try hard. So
Gotcha.
it's pretty funny.
Gotcha. Well, I think that's kind of it in a nutshell as far as where FPL is at right now. Anything we missed on game week 36, I kind of billed at the top of the episode as the forgotten game week. And I think our discussion, I'm kind of like, yeah, this is kind of like. It really comes down to a captain in this game week.
No, it's a pretty basic FPL week. It's I'm on a bye week, FPL bye week. I don't have anything to do. Roll the transfer. Okay. But then if you have the injuries, you have Ederson, defensive injuries, you have some options. So I think it's kind of fun. You have some options. You can do something a little different, and I think those moves will be pretty obvious as the week progresses. So. No, if you don't have injuries, it's a good roll week, good bye week to just hang out and wait for the double.
Totally agree. And just to reiterate on the double, it's our one last swing, our last grasp at immortality in game week 37, in which Chelsea, Spurs, City, Brighton, Newcastle, and Manchester United all double. So I agree with you, Dave. 36, if you can possibly roll your free, do so you can have all the ammunition and all the information and knowledge you can heading into 37 to maximize what's probably going to be the last powerful game week of the season. So let's leave it at that. Best of luck to everyone. If you want to check Always Cheating out on Patreon, Josh and I will be back. We'll hear about Josh's trip to Rome, and we'll get our insight into our final teams heading into the game week 36 deadline. Check us out at patreon.com/Always Cheating. As always, thank you to our producers at the highest level of our Patreon tier, Mike DePietro, Trevor Ingerson, our buddy Chris Howell, Babas Kuhn, James Holland, our great guest co-host Dave Weigner-Lodahl. Thanks for the support, Dave. Dave, do you love being a Patreon member?
I do. I got like at least like 7 Patreons now. I'm in. And the app is really confusing now, but I'm enjoying all the content that I get randomly assigned. So it's fun.
I love how you turn that into just a general shout out for Patreon as a company. And I think that's wonderful. I think we should join more Patreons. And there are lots of other great podcasts out there that you should support. Agreed. Also, thanks to producer Nick Wright, Lazarus Llanos, Jesse Halstead, Bruce Kerr, Brian Chin, Blair Jacobson, Todd Byerly, Andy Portlock at FPL Merch, Kerry Swanson, Jefferson Turner, Buffalo Wild Mings, Francis Moore, Sam Shower, Caleb Robbie, Vulgar Paulson Kruger, Alex Holcombs, James Keatley, The Saint, Bob Fox, Craig Jackson, Shalin F. Kadakia, Terrence O'Donnell, Heath Graham, Thomas Tislov, Noah and Louise, Travis Grant, Linus Vennerstrom, Dan Parsons, James C., Matthew Skinner, Fro Jacobson, Brennan, Daniel Hart, Lally, Ben Coombs, Eric Kite, Gareth H., Rune Sandberg, Brian Clark, and James Murray Wood. Rate, review, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and find us on YouTube. YouTube.com/.
Like and subscribe. Like and subscribe.
100. Smash that like button, Dave. And if you want to see what a real Bostonian looks like, go to our YouTube page and see Dave in all of his glory. Dave, I'm so grateful that you exist as a person and as a friend and as a guest co-host. And because you are Mr. May, I'm going to dub you Mr. May as far as FPL goes. I wish you the best of luck for the run-in. I know you're going to finish top 100K. Don't be shy. Don't act like a Spurs fan.
I'm locked in. I'm totally going for it.
Totally what's happening.
Thank you. And hail cheaters. Love talking to you, Brandon. Love seeing you. Thanks for having me.
All right. Peace, everyone. Be well. Bye.